We are starting chapter 9, section 1 again. Please have your calculators for the next section. You don't need it for this one because we're just solving. If you have something to use for this one to help you with basic operations, whatever, that's fine. You can use it. William?
Yep.
All right, first thing we're covering is probably something that some of you have definitely already seen. It's called the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, most important thing for this is your C. You have to know what your C is. And when you're looking at it, can anybody tell me what this line is, what it's called? Good. This is called your hypotenuse. Okay, your C has to be your hypotenuse. No matter what, it has to be that long side. If it's not that long side, then you're definitely doing something wrong. So when you see that long side, that diagonal side, it's always going to be your C. Your A and your B, if it happens and you switch them out and you make this one B and you make this one A, you're still going to get the same answer. So please make sure your hypotenuse is your C. This right here is a must. The C must be your hypotenuse. Another thing to remember, your hypotenuse is the longest side. Okay, that's something you should know. This is a really good intro for this chapter because you have to know these things. You have to know the Pythagorean theorem, and you have to know what your hypotenuse is, where you can find it on a triangle. So always remember that. Got that, please? All right, common triples. This is really good memorization-wise for SAT, ACT, PSAT, any of that standardized test that you guys take. Common triples are obviously common. They're the most common ones that you may see on a test. If you memorize these, great, sure. You do not have to show work if you memorize these. But there's a specific way you have to use them. This column right here, has to be your hypotenuse. These have to be your hypotenuse, which is considered your C. Because again, we know that the hypotenuse is the longest side. So these are the numbers that are going in your A squared plus B squared equals your C squared. So giving you an example on how you would see it, how it could be used. If you're given a triangle, and it says, here's 3, here's 5, what's my x? Because I know common triples, 3, 4, 5 triangle, I automatically know this can be a 4. However, if they're giving me a triangle, and it has a 3 and a 5 here, and they're asking for x, you cannot make your x 4. That's a no. Remember, your hypotenuse is your longest side. So if they gave you something with a side 3 and 5, you'd have to solve it to give you your hypotenuse. It cannot be 4. So make sure you remember that, because if you're given a triangle with similar numbers, you can't just plug one in. You have to solve it if it's not giving you that long hypotenuse side. So just remember that, please. Any questions on common triples? If you don't memorize them, that's fine. You can still solve them to get your answer. So if this is like, oh my gosh, Mr. Chung, this is too much to memorize, don't worry about it. You can still solve it using the Pythagorean theorem. And again, you guys will have calculators, so hopefully that'll help. Before we do the example, go ahead and add a page. I'm just going to go over some things that you guys should have learned last year, just as a refresher. So please work with me with this. I should see everybody have this open page on their notes. Add a page on your notes. You're going to have to wait. All right, going over this. If you were given x plus 2 squared, please understand that when they're giving you something like this and it's squaring it, you are not distributing your 2 like this because you have that addition sign. This is not x squared plus 4. That's not it. So can't cross it out because it can't work. How you are solving this is either you can write it out, and you're going to FOIL it. Yes, you are going to use foiling. So looking at it, if you forgot how to FOIL, you're going to do your first. So I have x squared plus 2x, and then your inners plus 2x plus 4. Yes, there are other ways to solve it, but I'm just doing the basic one that hopefully we remember. Don't forget when you're foiling it, you have to combine like terms if there are any. So right now you have x squared plus 4x plus 4. Okay, so please remember how to FOIL. Another thing to remember is if you're given, or what's the opposite? Let me write it this way. What's the opposite of square rooting something? Opposite is squaring it. Okay, so please make sure you remember that. So giving you an example of something you may see come up in this lesson. If I were to give you, not a 2, if I were to give you the square root of 5 squared, another way to write this is the square root of 5 times the square root of 5. And when you have two square roots with the same number, they're going to cancel out and you're just going to get 5 as an answer. But again, the opposite of square rooting something is squaring it. The opposite of squaring something is square rooting it. You're just getting rid of all of this, and you're just going to get 5 left over. Okay, just so you know, this would have been square root of 25, and that's a perfect root, and it would be 5. So just showing you different ways that it could be written. All right, so just giving you another one that you may see. If you have 3 square root 2 with everything being squared, this one you can distribute your 2 because there's no addition or subtraction sign. So I can distribute my 2. 3 squared times the square root of 2 squared. 3 squared is going to give me 9 times 2, which would give me 18, and that would be my answer. Okay, so all of this you can solve without a calculator. So if you do not have a calculator, you can do all of this, which is fine. But when we get in sine, cosine, and tangent, you're going to need a calculator. Yes. The only time you cannot distribute is when you have that plus sign. You have to make sure like you FOIL it. I would suggest you guys should have known how to write this out so you could visually see what it looks like. I mean, for this one, I could also write it as 3 times square root of 2 times 3 times the square root of 2. And then you could have done it this way. It's still the same. I'm still multiplying everything. Solving A. What is the formula that I have to use? Always write it down. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And labeling A, B, and this is my C. All right, plugging everything in. I have 5 squared plus 10 squared equals C squared. Solving it, what's 5 squared? Good. What's 10 squared? Equals C squared. Solving this first. I'm going to get 125 equals C squared. And again, how do I get rid of a squared? You're going to root it. So square root of 25. 125. All right, 2 things that you may get asked on your quiz or on your test. One is to simplify your radical. You cannot use a calculator to simplify a radical. It's not there. So Do we remember how to simplify a radical? Yes, no? Maybe so? All right, simplify my radical. All right, factoring it out. That's probably like an easy way to do it. Factoring it out, if I were to factor this out, what numbers multiplied together gets me 125? Yeah. What is it? 25 and 5. 25 is a perfect root. So what's the square root of 25? All right, yes, it is 5. So I'm just going to leave a 5 there because I'm taking it out of the root and it's just going to be 5. Is this a perfect root? No, so I'm leaving it how it is. So my answer for this, if it asks, simplify my radical, my answer would be 5. 5 radical 5 is C. Now, if they asked, write it as a decimal, this is when you could plug it into your calculator. Okay, and I'm going to tell you right now, you're not always going to change it to a decimal. So don't think, oh, I don't have to know how to simplify my radical. You have to know how to simplify a radical. So looking at this one, if you did it on a calculator, so make a decimal. Normally we're rounding to the tenths. And that's going to give you square root of 125. It's like 11.180 something, something, something. Rounding to the nearest tenth. Shh, boys. You're looking at a 1. That's your tenth, so I'm going to look at my 8. What would this be as a decimal? Good. C equals 11.2. Please don't put 11.20. Make sure it's just 11.2. Okay? So this is for A. Again, everyone says it's not hard, it's just the work. You guys obviously have it's a lot of work. You're just going to have to do the work. All right, looking at B. Same thing. Label your A, B, and C. Here's A, B, C, and I'm going to go ahead and plug it into my formula. A squared plus B squared, everything is being squared, equals my C squared. And I'm solving for Y. Please pay attention to this one. Looking at this one, solving it out. 5 squared is what? I have 25 plus, I am going to solve y minus 1 over here, y minus 1 squared. Write it twice, and then FOIL it. Y squared minus y minus plus 1. If you know the trick for these, you don't necessarily have to FOIL it out. So I'm plugging it in right here. Y squared minus 2y plus 1 equals y squared.
Why is it plus 1 and not minus?
Because it's negative 1 times negative 1. So when I'm foiling it, I'm doing the top ones and then the bottom ones. All right, I'm going to go ahead and combine my like terms. So looking at this, like terms that I have 25 plus 1. So now I have y squared minus 2y plus 26 equals y squared. I'm going to get rid of my y squared. How am I going to get rid of my y squared? Subtract it on both sides. Okay, subtracting it on both sides. So subtracting y squared on both sides. I'm going to cancel this out. Now I have negative 2y plus 26 equals 0. Remember, I'm solving for y, so I can't have 0 on that side. Now what should I do? I'm not going to add 2y because remember, I'm trying to solve for y. Yeah?
Negative 26.
Good. I'm going to subtract 26 from both sides. Now I have negative 2y equals negative 26. Oops, that's not a 6. And then what am I going to do last? Perfect. Divide by negative 2. And y is going to equal 13, and I'm done. So yes, it's easy, but you have to do the work for it. It is a lot of work. But again, you will have a calculator, but you can't just plug everything into the calculator and expect to get your answer. It's not going to work that way. All right. C, I'm going to go ahead and do C. Same thing I've been doing before. I'm going to first label what I have. So A, B, C, and then I'm plugging it into my formula. I have A squared plus B squared equals C squared. All right, solving it out. I cannot do anything with this x squared. What's 3 squared? 9, and then I have 3 square root 2 with everything squared. What would that be? Wouldn't be 3. All right, looking at it, I'm going to solve it right here. I have 3 square root 2 squared. You can distribute your square. 3 squared is what? 9 times, what's the square root of 2 squared? 2. Okay, remember they're going to cancel out the signs. 9 times 2 gives me 18. So right now, right here, I have 18. Solving for x, what do I do now? Good, I'm going to subtract my 9. I have x squared equals 9. And then what should I do last? Good, square root it. X equals, what's the square root of 9? 3, and I'm done. So some of them may look very complicated, but I promise you, doing the work, it is not. So, all right, this question says find the length of the diagonal of a rectangle. So draw a rectangle. I'm going to draw it up top just so I give myself some space. And I'm trying to find that diagonal length. The length is 8 and the width is 4. So 8 up here, 4 down here. And a rectangle is made up of 2 triangles. So I'm trying to find my diagonal. I'm going to place it as x. What is my Pythagorean theorem? That's what I'm going to use. These are right triangles. Pythagorean theorem is for right triangles. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. What's my a?
4.
It could either be 4 or 8, whatever you want to make it. So 4 squared plus 8 squared equals c squared. I'm trying to find that diagonal, my hypotenuse. So solving it out, what's 4 squared? Plus equals c squared. Add them together. 80 equals c squared. How do I get rid of that squared? Good, you're going to square root it. So c equals the square root of 80. Go ahead and simplify your radical. Simplifying your radical, you have your 80. There were a couple ways my other students in the other class did it. So there are a couple ways for you to simplify this. But I personally like to factor it out. They like to break it up into 2 different radicals. But looking at this one, well, what I factor this out to? What am I going to use to factor it out? What did somebody use? Because we could get so many different answers. Yeah.
16.5.
Wait, whoa. All right, 4 and 20. Okay. The square root of 4 is a perfect square. So I have 2. Okay, it's outside of my radical. I'm done with it. It's outside my radical. It's a whole number now. What about 20?
4 and 5.
All right, I have 4 and 5. 4 again is a perfect root. 5 is not, so I have that left over. How am I writing this as my answer? I would have 2 times 2 the radical of 5. What's 2 times 2?
4.
4 radical 5 would be my answer. All right, if it did ask me, round to the nearest tenth, all you have to do is put square root of 8 in your calculator. What would it be, Patterson? 8.9. Is that rounded correctly? All right, 8.9 would be correct. Does anybody have any questions on that one? All right, looking at example number 3, the diagonals of a rhombus has lengths 16, 30. Find the perimeter of the rhombus. So a rhombus, draw your rhombus. Drawing the rhombus at the top. All right, here's my rhombus. And it says, the diagonals of a rhombus have a length of 16 and 30. So that means, I'll highlight it so you know which one I'm writing down. One length is 16 and one length is 30. So looking at my rhombus, I have 16 for this entire side and 30 for my entire purple side. I'm going to split it in half. Remember, rhombus, your diagonals are bisecting. So looking at it, I'm going to erase these because it looks like it's only for one part. What's half of 16? So I have 8 and 8. And what about 30?
15.
Good, 15 and 15. All right, it wants me to find the perimeter. Please be aware of your shapes. We just covered shapes the last chapter. These are all right angles. So I have how many triangles here? How many right triangles do I have? 4. So I need to find my hypotenuse, and then what do I have to do with it? What do you think I'd have to do once I find one hypotenuse? Find the other ones, but I could just multiply it by 4 because I have 4 of the same triangles. So go ahead and try and solve this one on your own. You're finding your hypotenuse for either one side, and then perimeter, you need to add all of them. Go ahead and solve this one. All right, maybe it'll help visually to see it drawn out as one triangle. So this is one piece of my triangle. This is actually supposed to be a right angle. And then you have 8 and 15. That's only one little piece. All right, first thing is I always like to write my formula. I'm trying to find the hypotenuse of a right triangle. So I have a squared plus, that's not a squared, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. I'm trying to solve for my c. All right, I'm setting it up. 8 squared plus 15 squared equals c squared. 8 times 8 would give me a 64. Let me write it down. Plus 15 squared. This is why you have a calculator, because you could easily do these fast. You're going to get 225 equals c squared. Next, add them. 64 plus 225 is going to give you 289. All right, getting rid of that squared, square rooting it. This is a perfect square. I told you guys you could use a calculator for this one. It would have given you what? 17 is not my answer, okay? Remember, question asks for perimeter of the rhombus. 17 is right here. 17 is right here. 17 is right here, and 17 is right here. This is, oh, that's a 14. All you have to do is take that 17, either add it 4 times or multiply it times 4, and your answer should have been, your perimeter equals
68.
68 as your answer. Questions, comments, concerns for this one?